Hi guys, is Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae a reliable source of information? Well, if you were to look at practically any reference work, any modern reference work about this subject, then you'd find the answer would be no. In fact, the Encyclopaedia Britannica describes the Historia Regum Britanniae as historically worthless. That's a very harsh description. But I disagree with that description. So, just to clarify, what exactly do I mean when I say that I disagree with that description? Well, I'm not saying that I think that the Historia Regum Britanniae is perfect. Clearly it's not. There are many clear, demonstrable inaccuracies in many different parts of it. But I don't believe that it's worthless. Now, when these reference works like the Encyclopaedia Britannica, when they refer to it as historically worthless, they evidently mean that when it describes events which are not found in earlier records, then we can just dismiss that as fictional. The reasoning being that people think that Geoffrey of Monmouth just took all the many different scraps of information about the relevant period of British history, and he sort of put them all together and filled in the gaps with his own imagination and elaborated all these stories with his own imagination. That's the idea, that's what people claim. So therefore, when we find bits of information in the Historia Regum Britanniae which we don't find in these earlier sources like Bede or Gildas or whatever, then we can just dismiss that, hence it's historically worthless. That's the idea. However, I think that the Historia Regum Britanniae genuinely does preserve genuine traditions, not things that Geoffrey simply made up himself. But when we find claims made in that book which we don't find in any surviving works from before Geoffrey of Monmouth, I think they should be given serious consideration, that maybe they are in fact genuine traditions. Now here is one example of that. In his description of the pre-Roman era of British history, Geoffrey of Monmouth describes a king of the southeast of Britain called Cunobelinus, or he calls him Cymbeline. So Cunobelinus is described in the Historia Regum Britanniae as having an exceptionally good relationship with the Romans. So that's in contrast to the surrounding kings. So Cunobelinus does appear in some contemporary Roman accounts, but only very briefly. He's mentioned by name, but that's pretty much all the information that there is in these contemporary Roman accounts. And he's not mentioned in any other accounts, like Gildas or Bede or anything else like that. So the only information that Geoffrey of Monmouth could have had from the sources that still survive until today is basically a name. Yet Geoffrey of Monmouth says that he had this exceptionally good relationship with the Romans, and significantly that has been confirmed by archaeology. Examinations of coins left by this king, Cunobelinus, have revealed that he did in fact have an especially good relationship with the Romans in contrast to his surrounding kings. For example, the previous king of Britain, of that part of Britain, his coins are signed with the word for king in Britannic, whereas the coins of Cunobelinus have the word rex, which is the Latin word for king. And these coins also have many images and symbols from the classical world, the world of the Romans and Greeks. And in addition, we find, archaeology has demonstrated that trade increased notably between Britain and the continent during the reign of Cunobelinus. And obviously the continent at that time, Gaul in particular, that was controlled by the Romans. So he evidently, but based on archaeology in terms of the evidence from trade, but also based on coin evidence as well, and the symbols that he used, as well as the language that he had them written in, all this indicates that he had this exceptionally good relationship with the Romans, in contrast to his surrounding kings, just like the Historia Regum Britanniae claims, but which we find never mentioned anywhere else in any other surviving source. So that, in my opinion, is clear evidence that, at least in that one specific instance, Geoffrey of Monmouth's account did in fact preserve a genuine tradition going back to 1st century Britain that has not survived through any other source. So that is one reason, just one small piece of evidence, why I believe that we can in fact put at least some weight, or give some weight, to the parts of the Historia Regum Britanniae which we don't find in other sources. We shouldn't just dismiss them as Geoffrey's own fictions. We should consider them and see, well, do they in fact tie up with available evidence like archaeology?